Hi, my name is Steve Yamamoto. I'm the pre-visualization supervisor on Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. This scene here is the introduction of the Fallen, who's the main reason why the Autobots and the Decepticons split. His face is supposed to be the icon of the Decepticons. When the Fallen sees the humans, he thinks that they're insects. The Fallen has created this machine called the Harvester, which essentially would kill our son. This sequence was animated primarily by Chris Williams, Rob Dressel, and Kyle Robinson. We created about 55 minutes of material for about 50 separate sequences. The first bad guy or Decepticon comes right here. Michael didn't want to see the transformation yet, so we hid him behind all these giant concrete pipes. And then all war breaks loose here. This sequence contains what I think is the best shot in all of previs, which is the shot where Wheelbot comes through the 4-lane concrete overpass and Optimus jumps on top of him. This shot really set up the rest of the movie and the scale of the movie and what this movie was going to be above and beyond the first movie. One thing about showing shots of that scale, you really need a lot of objects that the audience can relate to, such as the cars and Optimus, to give it that scale reference. From the very beginning, Michael wanted to introduce a bunch of different robots with a lot of different capabilities and styles and forms to them. This one was unique in that we had these motorcycle girls as one-legged characters, much like inline skaters or skateboarders. This character, I like the way he transforms because it's very smooth. This combination motorcycle never made it into the movie. And again, here's another character with a different form, which is modeled off of actually a roller derby character, very tough and mean. This action here where he jumps over and throws the blade and splits the car in half was done by an ILM animator as a test originally. This sequence is an example of what I call one of Michael's signature shots. For this sequence, it's the hero's entrance or introduction, where we go around him a few times. It's very similar to the one in the first Transformers movie where the camera revolves around him or orbits around him. I think in this case, we should have cut right about here because you can never actually shoot that shot. This scene was one of the first ones that I animated, and it wasn't so hard that it was a complicated scene, but we do have 10 transforming robots within the scene, and it usually takes about 2 weeks to create a fully transformable robot. There are a couple of cases where you'll see where we faked it, like that guy who was the disposal. You don't see him transform. One of the shots or moments, again, little character moments that we inserted that I really liked. Here was one part where the microwave bot destroys one of these guys. Here's kind of a little bit that I kind of liked, where the leader of the kitchen bots felt the water hit his head, and he goes to get his troops to go find out what's up there or who's up there. The other thing that kind of made this really challenging is that since it was one of the first scenes that we had animated to, we didn't have any designs from the art department of the characters, so we had to build them all ourselves. And here's Bumblebee's disproportionate response, blowing up the house. Another little character bit of animation that I liked in this scene was right here where Bumblebee thinks he has done a really good job in killing all the Decepticons, but he's being reprimanded and like a kid who feels a little misunderstood, kind of walks away dejectedly. In this sequence, we had a number of Decepticons who are nothing like any of the other robots in the first movie. This first one, who's called Ravage, here he comes out. He first turns into a fish, and then he turns into this jaguar-ish character, presumably to infiltrate the military base. And then we have these microbots, or what we call ball bots or sphere bots, which basically look like a lot of little BBs or ball bearings. And that's how they infiltrate into the vault itself, to the electronics and ventilation conduits. This is one of my favorite shots in the movie. It was also one of our most technically difficult shots. My animator, Chris Williams, animated all those little BBs or spheres, and then started this whole process, which is where the ball bots create this really, really, really thin character whom we called the reed bot or thin bot or thin man. And the whole premise of this character was that he was so thin that he could hide in plain sight by simply lining himself up to you. We tried to show that his ability to do that by revolving around and around and around him. And my animator, Rob Dressel, did this scene. And I think it's very clear in our animatic that when he does line himself up, it's impossible to see him, but we do kind of go around him quite a bit. Here's the DocBot at the bottom and he finds the shard there. I hope it's clear that that's the same Dr. Bot that basically examines Sam later in the movie. This scene reunites Sam and Michaela with Starscream and Megatron. In this scene, we have Megatron just kind of standing in this little pit. I think he did it much better in the actual film, where he kind of rises ominously in the background behind Michaela. At the time, we called him the Dr. Bot or DocBot. He's one of my favorites. Michael wanted this character to have a lot of expression, especially in his hands here. So he had this little kind of evil rubbing of his hands and kind of He'd snap his fingers to get people's attention and command them that way. So we took a little more time with the animation of this character, and I think it paid off for us. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this is that since the character is so small, about 1.5 feet in size, our cameras are really tight here for most of the scene, which is actually great because it's similar to Sam's perspective of this DocBot examining his head. Just as important, especially in this movie, is that it allowed the director, the actors, and the camera crew something to reference while shooting the film, because the characters weren't there during the shooting. It was all going to be put in later in visual effects. When Bumblebee and Optimus come in, we have a nice contrast of shots. Now we're wide and we have much more heroic camera movements in here. Just nice contrast to the real close-up stuff of DocBot. This scene is what we call the forest fight, or the fight between Optimus and Megatron. And I know it was something that a lot of the fans wanted to see in this movie after the first one, was just an all-out head-to-head battle between Optimus and Megatron. And from what I heard, a lot of people wanted to see Optimus Prime just kick some butt. And I think in the movie, he does. Early on, we were trying to find a good fighting style for Optimus, and some of this feels a little stylized because we had referenced a lot of anime fight sequences when we started out. The actual fight itself in the movie was re-choreographed by the stunt coordinators, I believe. For obvious reasons, which you'll see right here, we didn't distribute this animatic to anybody, I think, really. But for those who Michael showed it to, especially early on, it left the room just completely silent. Everyone was shocked what we had done, and that's where I knew that the story and what Michael and what we were doing was working. When Michael described this scene, we knew it was going to be epic in scale. He wanted this whole aircraft carrier to sink within a matter of minutes. And actually, I had to check and see how fast actually a ship that size could sink. And I believe I read that the Lusitania sank in about 18 minutes, and another liner sank in about 14 minutes, because it always seemed really fast for that size ship. One of the things that we knew this scene was about this, not only the Decepticons returning to Earth, but also killing thousands and thousands of humans and American sailors. So our camera movements were a little more somber, a little more restrained, rather than kind of a little more spectacular.